expose you, the audience, to informative discussions on topics relevant to a technology career. I'm your host, Adibai Alfie, and I head the Research Development and the Innovation Department at Steamledge Limited. Joining me is my colleague, Victor Anao, who heads the Steam Pal and the Tech Hub Department. Victor will be our moderator in the chats, and so as the webinar goes on, we encourage you to drop all your questions in the chat. If you could kindly mute yourself, please. Thank you. Also, we have an audience poll, which we would love everyone to fill. It's completely anonymous, and so just give about 5 to 10 minutes for everyone to actually fill the poll and to get the answers in. And with that, I'll launch the poll. Victor, can you kindly try to launch the poll?
Okay, I'm launching it now.
Okay.
Okay, the poll is launched. Please, can we just take a few minutes and fill it? Our responses are very much appreciated.
Okay, awesome.
Hello, Amrita.
Hi,
Good
Adibayo.
afternoon or good evening. Yeah. Thanks for taking your time out to do this.
Thank
Really
you so
appreciate it.
much.
Yeah.
Should I be turning on the video?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Let me just stop sharing my screen, sorry. Okay. All right.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, Amrita. Okay, so it's awesome. So I think we've actually filled the polls, if I'm correct, Victor. So I think we can go on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so I'm very excited to introduce our guest at the webinar, Amritagandha Dutta. Amrita is the founder and CEO of Expand AI, a company whose mission it is to automate the process of data labeling. Amrita, we're happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Adibayo. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So I think we can just start from the top, right? How would you explain AI to a layman?
So I think, according to me, the way in which I would explain AI to a layman would be that essentially, AI is anything that a human can do, and a machine can also do that. That, to me, as a layman, would be artificial intelligence. So, for example, in that way, when you define it like that, even when you like hard code a chatbot, for example, right? That could also then be considered as artificial intelligence, but then that is not really considered as artificial intelligence. So in that way, my definition of artificial intelligence would be that when you train a machine to kind of learn on its own, right? That is when what you have achieved is essentially artificial intelligence.
Right.
So to kind of clarify that further, distinction would be it can't just be a machine that can perform tasks on its own, because even when you hard code it, it can still do that. But it's a machine that can, let's say, learn from the environment and then perform the task that it's been created to perform.
Awesome. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to record. I think I didn't record this session. All right, so I think it's recording now. So great. So there has to be a time between the machine actually being able to learn, right? It's not just the fact that we can code it to do some kind of a rule-based thing. It has to be able to learn. All right. But then how do you differentiate that from automation? Because I think, and rightly so, most people might confuse AI with automation. So is there any difference between automation and AI?
So I would say AI is a type of automation, but of course, not every automation would be AI, right? So, for example, just the example that I gave of like a hard-coded chatbot, right? That is a kind of automation. You have given it, you have written the code with some if-else statements, right? So it's able to do certain tasks. But the moment, it's been given some complex task, right? It can't think on its own. So that is not artificial intelligence. That's been just hard-coded. But that's the kind of automation. Those are the kinds of chatbots that you see, on many websites. When you go on a company website and there's a chatbot there, usually it's a hard-coded one, right? It just can answer some specific questions and give you like multiple choice, answers. So the difference would be that with AI, as I said, like I mean, they should be able to learn from the environment and then be able to perform the task that it's been given. So that would be the essential difference. AI is a kind of automation. Like for example, when you see robotic arms, for example, in manufacturing industries, right? That is a kind of automation. When robotic arms are bought into like, let's say, a manufacturing plant, right? You say that, okay, like this company has automated the process, right? So it's kind of automation. But then again, these robotic arms are powered by AI. So AI to me would be a kind of automation, but not every automation is AI at the same time.
Right. So it's more like AI is the enabler behind state-of-the-art automation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Something like that. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, machine learning and particularly deep learning has been making all the rage lately, right? Now we've been hearing about GPT-3 and other deep learning models that are actually doing a whole lot of amazing things. So is AI ML?
So again, like here, I would say that machine learning is a sort of artificial intelligence, but of course, like not every kind of artificial intelligence is machine learning. So according to me, the distinction would be that machine learning is essentially when you have built a model, you have trained it, and then it's being able to perform a certain task, right? Whereas artificial general intelligence, for example, you would not really classify that as machine learning because again, there is no sort of like very kind of overt learning involved out there. Like you don't need any kind of training data or anything of that sort, right? So it's essentially like basically being able to learn from its environment and then do basically like general intelligence is essentially like just like a human being, right? Able to do, as we discussed earlier, that definition of AGI would be that an intelligence that is able to perform both the analytic side of it as well as the creative side of it, right? Just like as human beings, we both have a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere. We're able to do data analysis as well as we're able to do creative endeavors. So AGI would be able to do that. So that would not be classified as machine learning. Whereas let's say a chatbot, or let's say even the software that powers self-driving cars, those would be a type of machine learning. So I think that's where the distinction lies between machine learning and artificial intelligence.
A set of AI, and AI can be a huge field that has probably a lot of different models, and then machine learning is just like a single subset of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so you run an AI company, Expand AI.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what Expand AI does?
Sure. So essentially what Expand AI is doing is it's automating the data labeling process. With machine learning, there are different types of models that can be used. One would be supervised learning, the other would be unsupervised learning, right? These are two most common types of models there, supervised learning being the most common. So essentially what you see with supervised learning is that there's a need to have a high quality training data set to train the ML model to perform accurately, right? So as you see with self-driving cars, or you see with drones, or you see with chatbots, those which are AI powered, you need to kind of train it on training data for the model to perform accurately. So how is this training data set created? Essentially, companies have raw data which they label, and then the training data set is prepared. So when you look at the labeling part, that is a manual process, right? So there are a number of problems that exist with the manual data labeling. I'll talk about four main ones. The first one would be that, like the labels can be prone to human errors, right? So because if the data annotator does not have the right domain knowledge, then the labels can be prone to human errors. Second thing would be that it takes a lot of time. It could take weeks or even months to get the data labeled, depending on the volume and the complexity of the data. And then the third thing would be that, like data privacy becomes a concern, especially for, let's say, medical data or financial data, where if a human being is sitting and, reading that data and annotating, that can be a concern for a lot of companies. They would not want to share that data because it's very sensitive in nature a lot of the times. And another thing would be that, expense is a huge concern as well. Like even if the companies are building a team in-house to label the data, or they're outsourcing it to a manual data labeling company, it costs them thousands of dollars. So, so these are the 4 key pain points. The way in which we're solving it is by automating the data labeling process. So what happens when you automate the data labeling process is that you're able to reduce the turnaround time. We've been able to reduce it by, at least 70%. So if with manual data labeling, it takes like 4 to 5 weeks, we're able to do it in a week and a half, depending on the complexity and the volume. We're able to reduce the expenses by, up to 50%. And our models, they consistently give above 95% accurate labels. And as you can imagine, data privacy is no more a concern.
Awesome. Wow. Wow, that sounds like really, really high value. So yeah, even just speaking from my experience, the fact that we've done some labeling in the past, and the fact that we have to continuously come back to correcting errors, or we have to spend this large amount of time to just label. So it would have been great to have had a company like yours just outsource that too. So awesome. But again, it can't all be all roses, right? I'm pretty sure there's some difficulties with trying to automate data labeling. So can you also speak about some difficulties you guys face?
Sure. The difficulty would be, as you can imagine, that, when you try to, so why is data required for supervised learning, right? Because with supervised learning model, it needs data in order to get some context as to what it's looking at and the job that it's supposed to perform, right? So the training data set is what provides that context. It's just like, if I may draw an analogy with a baby, right? When a baby is born, it essentially learns from its environment. And then it's able to perform a certain task. So it's the same with, supervised learning models, right? So that is a job the training data set does, is that it essentially teaches the baby that, okay, this is what you're looking at. This is, let's say, a chair or a desk or a bed or whatever, like a table or whatever that, it is that it's looking at. So the point is that when you're trying to automate this process of labeling the data itself, then the question comes back to the fact that, okay, so then are we building an unsupervised learning model? Are we completely trying to do away with training data, right? You get where I'm going with this? So the thing is that is a problem that we faced. And, so are you trying to build an unsupervised learning model that, labels data and provides a training data set? Because if you're doing that, then essentially you're saying the supervised learning model not really required, because if, a software can label the data, then, what is the need for training data set? So so again, that is not possible, because you cannot have a software that will completely autonomously label the data. So we have reached the best case scenario that's possible, which is that 95% of the data is autonomously labeled. The 5% still has to be manually labeled by our team, right? So that 5% that is manually labeled by our team is then you train the software, the domain specific software that we have built. You train that with that 5% data that's labeled, and then the rest of 95% of the data is labeled by our software. So that's what the process looks like, and that is the challenge that we face. That how do we automate this, where we're not actually trying to build an unsupervised learning model, because if we achieve that, then essentially I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yes, so I was saying that you still need a human in the loop to do that process of labeling.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Really unsupervised models.
Yeah.
So I'm saying it sort of way that the unsupervised models actually do some kind of clustering, and then you need the human in the loop to sort of ground truth and make sure that these clusters are actually the right domains. Somewhere around that, right? Okay.
Somewhere around that, yeah.
All right, awesome. So these challenges that you talked about, yeah, I know you spoke about the fact that you're trying to surmount these challenges, but how do you actually go about handling these challenges? Do you hire more manual data labelers, or do you actually engineer the algorithms or the model to actually label better?
Right. So I guess we haven't really faced any challenge on this part. The main challenge was actually building the model. right? So that is where we had to hire like the best talent, which is also like the conversation that we had. This is the reason why we've been able to retain a lot of talent, at the company as well. So we've had to hire like the best minds to actually build this model. That was the most challenging part that I would say, which is building the right model that would actually be able to just learn from 5% of the data and then label the rest of the 95% of the data. That was the main challenge. But once you have that sorted, the rest of it as to how many human annotators do you need to have, and all of that just kind of falls into place. That was not the challenging part. It was building the model that was more challenging.
I can imagine. All right, awesome. All right, so it's no surprise that AI is the hardest topic in the world right now. If it isn't, then it's just it's part of it, right? So what are some fields in AI that are actually also the hardest fields in AI right now? So we've talked about NLP, computer vision. Which ones do you think are actually the hardest fields to get into right now?
Right. So I would say that self-driving cars, robotics, these two would be the hardest fields right now. And also chatbots, because one thing that I've seen is that there are actually a lot of companies using chatbots for a number of use cases, right? So I think the one common use case that I've seen is actually using chatbots to solve some of the HR problems that a lot of companies face, because as you can imagine, with every new hire, the HR have to essentially answer a lot of the common questions, like how many leaves do I get, or what is like the medical insurance, like what is the amount of medical insurance, stuff like this. So what a lot of companies essentially trying to do with chatbots out here is that they're trying to automate they're trying to ease the HR process, so that HR professionals can only deal with some complicated situations which AI probably would not be able to deal with as well. But these other more simple things the chatbots can deal with. So that is one application that we have seen where chatbots have been widely used. And self-driving cars, all over the world, I think there are a number of companies working on self-driving cars. And also robotics, like robotic arms, in the manufacturing use case, these would be most common. And if you ask me why, I would say that for self-driving cars, I actually I actually have an interesting theory. I'd love to hear what you have to say regarding that, Adibayo, which is that I think that first of all, when you have built an AI software that can essentially automate, that you can essentially use for a number of use cases, I think the first and the most natural use case that you would think about would be cars, right? And I think the reason where that imagination even comes from is that I think from, let's say, the 60s and the 70s, we have kind of, seen a growth of let's say sci-fi movies, right? Like with Star Trek, Star Wars. So I think that, that is kind of a vision that everybody kind of grew up with, especially in the US. So I think as you know, a lot of the entrepreneurs out there, especially Elon Musk and even Jeff Bezos, they're hugely inspired, and they're very vocal about it, that they've been hugely inspired by these movies. So I think when you see, companies like Tesla, or, even some of the other companies, even Larry Page, for that matter of fact, with the self-driving car efforts at Google. So when they kind of venture into that, my guess would be, it's probably these movies that they grew up watching, which kind of influenced it in that direction. But then again, as I said, then once you actually have built an AI model that can automate a lot of these monotonous processes, I think cars would be the first application. Then again, you would want to kind of automate the manufacturing process as well, because again, that's monotonous. So I think the reason why it's more common in the manufacturing industry, as well as with self-driving cars, would be because essentially what you're doing with AI is you are kind of automating the monotonous process, right? Which would be driving, which would be the manufacturing process. So yeah.
Driving stopping the traffic or on the highway, right? It's just the same thing. So if you could just relax and unwind, it would actually be a very beautiful experience. So you mentioned NLP, which I can agree with. You also mentioned robotics and self-driving cars. Yeah, with the self-driving cars thing, I mean, if you just go back into history and say, okay, when did we first have our first self-driving car? I think that was probably in the 1960s, and it was made by this guy, Mercedes-Benz. He drove the highways.
I think it was Stanford, right? It came out of Stanford, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, I think so. But then I think it was sponsored by Mercedes-Benz or something, or Daimler. So and they actually drove on the highway without any disengagement. That was in the 1960s. And this is the same thing we're doing today. So if I look at the progress between the 1960s and now, I haven't really seen anything different, right? Yeah, we have companies like Tesla, AI, Waymo who are working on this. But I think, I don't know, I don't really hedge my hat on the promise of self-driving. I know you have a soft spot for self-driving cars, but with the way we're going, I'm not sure we're actually approaching the problem, with the right. I'm not sure we're actually using the right tools here, right? So I don't think deep learning on its own is actually going to solve self-driving cars, because it's always a data labeling process. How much data can you actually have?
Right.
Can you label if a duck were to cross the road, you can't label that. Like, okay, so and I could just go on this long tail of things and scenarios you can't account for.
Right, and actually, like, the problem is even more, when you're building like autonomous trucks, right, which are supposed to go on the highway, because what happens, in a highway situation is that, there are some odd use cases, odd scenarios that you may see, right? Like, how do you account for those, right? Like, let's say, for example, some, animal trying to cross the road, right? Now, not every time can you actually get, get a footage like that, like let's say video footage of that or a picture of that, which you can easily like annotate and then have that included in your training data set. So like that, it's to kind of like take account of those common cases becomes a difficulty, and so which is the reason why building autonomous trucks, like, especially like in a highway situation, is actually very challenging. So yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Okay, thank you very much for the explanations on AI. While we wait for Adebayo to come in, we have some questions. Maybe you can share some light to them currently from our listeners. Okay, I have this one from Mohammed Salisu. He asked a question: with regards to the types of machine learning tasks, which category does time series and forecast fall into? Let me repeat it. With regards to types of machine learning tasks, which category does time series and forecast fall into?
So I think time series would fall into, I would say, computer vision, right? That would be my guess, although I'm not too aware of time series, but I would say that would probably fall into computer vision.
Oh, computer vision, that's great. Thank you very much.
All right. So can we go into Amrita? Can you help us separate between the AI hype and the reality?
Sure. So to me, I don't see AI as really a hype. I would say that it is very much a reality. That's what my take is, because I think that like the moment you see a kind of wave, like a technical wave, like what we saw with the PC revolution as well, right? The growth is usually exponential and not linear, right? So essentially, once now that AI has actually started taking off, what you will see is that the growth will actually be extremely exponential, and like the time that we will actually take to, let's say, make AGI a reality will actually be faster than what most people imagine. The only question is that, is it going to be safe? And by what I mean by safe, and this is a discussion that Adiba and I both have had, is that we'll be able to solve the explainability problem by then. Right? Because if we haven't solved that problem by then what we will have built will not be really safe for everybody, because you will basically not understand how the artificial intelligence is basically being able to reach the answers, right? And which is a problem. But I would say that it's to me, like, it doesn't seem like a hype. It's very, very, very real, especially with the progress that you see when you see DeepMind building AlphaGo, which can be the best Go player in the world. When you see things like that actually happening, like it's not a hype. It is very much real. The only problem is that even like the same thing with DeepMind, like they still don't know how AlphaGo actually did that, right? They have no idea. So like I said, the question comes down to, like, can we solve the explainability problem? Because if we can't, then that's an issue.
I completely agree with what you had to say. Completely agree. I think explainability is really one of the issues we should be looking at. So am I correct in saying that your hope for AI is that we get to some kind of AI that we can explain?
Yep, that is what my hope would be. But I would say that, AI very much is a reality already. It's not a hype.
Right. It's not a hype. Awesome. Okay, so some of our audience members might just be starting out or looking to start up a career, or even just learning AI. So do you have any tips for us on things to focus on, avoid,
Sure,
etc.?
sure. So I'm guessing before I actually get into this, Adibhai, I want to ask you that, are most of your audience members, from a technical background, or are there some people not from a technical background, or all of them from a technical background?
I'd say a less than a 50-50 split. 50% will be from a technical background, or 40%, and then 60% will be from a non-technical background.
Right. So, to tell you more about my background, I am not from a technical background. This is something that, like when I told Adibhai for the first time, he was actually very surprised. Not from a technical background, don't have a proper professional training in artificial intelligence. I am from a business background rather, and ventured into AI because, after I graduated from college, AI was something that really drew me. I got really interested, and my main thing was, I want to learn more about it, right? I want to take courses, I want to go to events, I want to talk to leaders, and I want to learn more about it. In the process, I realized I came to know the problems that exist with, data labeling, the data bottleneck, and, I wanted to solve it. I was inspired to solve it, especially, this problem kind of surfaced itself when I was talking to leaders. I went to like startup grind in the Silicon Valley as well. This is where like the idea came to me that, okay, this is a problem that needs to be solved. And my main, reason behind starting the venture was that, instead of just learning like in isolation, by just taking courses or by just reading books, what if I actually, started a venture which helped me learn about this firsthand, right? So, which is the reason why I started. And this is without me having any kind of professional like training or any kind of like, degree in AI. So, which is the reason why I asked you, how many, the people who are watching, like how many of them are from a technical background? Because, what I have to say to those who are not from a technical background would be that it does not matter if you are from an AI background, if you have had a training in AI, it really doesn't matter. Don't doubt yourself, because what do you really have to lose, right? Because either you learn something, start the company, either you learn something, or it becomes like a huge and successful company, right? And I would say that, with internet,
Yeah, go ahead.
okay, sure. So like with the internet, what you see is that, you can easily have access to courses. Like you can go on Coursera, you can go on, some of the other, platforms that are there, and you can easily take up, AI courses, and you can educate yourself. So even if you haven't studied AI back in college, or don't have any kind of knowledge on AI, but want to do something to contribute to, the AI movement, back there, what you can do is you can take up courses, you can educate yourself, you can read books, and then just like start a company, right? Because I think nothing can actually give you the kind of learning, the kind of knowledge that you're looking for, as compared to like a first-hand, knowledge of it. Because the moment you start a company, you're going to know exactly how the industry works. You're going to have first-hand knowledge, right? So that is always very important. Now, I'd like to bring in another point here, which is, I was recently reading this book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. This is another book that I would highly recommend, all of you who have recently graduated from college, or even like 2-3 years out of college, really read this book, because essentially what this book talks about is that there are two kinds of mindsets, right? A fixed mindset and a growth mindset. So there are a lot of people who operate with a fixed mindset. They think that, okay, there's a certain level of intelligence that I've been born with, and I can't really go beyond that, which has scientifically been proven that that is not true, right? So, and she's a professor, psychology professor from Stanford, and she has kind of like researched, and what she has kind of come to the conclusion that all successful people, they essentially all adhere to the growth mindset, because they don't think that intelligence is actually like a limited or a fixed commodity. So they know that, the more they learn, the more they educate themselves, the more, their intelligence is going to increase, and the more they're also going to be able to succeed, because they'll have more knowledge, which they can then go out and like do something about that in the world, right? So, And for those who, that would be my advice for those who are not from a technical background and, you know, are looking to go into AI. For those who are from a technical background and are looking to go into AI, I would say that, you know, like I would say 50% of your job right there is done. The fact that you are from a technical background just means that, you know, you've already kind of have that foundation. If you haven't done anything specifically like in AI, then you would still have a very kind of engineering or technical background, which will act as good foundation when you learn more about AI, right? So maybe, you know, careers in, let's say, like, and, you know, becoming an ML engineer or data scientist is going to become very easy for you, right? Because you understand the physics behind it, you understand the mathematics behind it, you know, you can code as well. So then, you know, you can be very hands-on with the product, right? Building the product, you can be very hands-on with that. Whereas for those who are maybe from a you know, non-technical background, you could maybe, if you also have, let's say, a business skill set, then, you know, you could be very hands-on with like you know, maybe like taking up more of like a managerial position, or, you know, being more of like a manager at the company. So this is what I would say. Yeah.
Awesome. I completely agree. However, I'm going to put you on the spot because you mentioned starting a company, and starting a company, you said it's one of the best ways you can learn, right? You should learn on the job. But if I look at the statistics, it said it's about 95% of companies that are started fail within the first 5 years. So it obviously depends on what you're trying to optimize for. If you're trying to optimize for learning, yeah, you can start a company on anything and just learn, right? Whether or not the company actually thrives is relevant. But how about for some of us, or for some people who actually want to start companies and hope that these companies actually pan out? Would you say, would it be, are you advising for, you know, these people to start a company on the fact that they even have very limited knowledge on AI? So wouldn't that severely limit their chances of that company actually making it?
So if I've got your question correct, you're saying that, you know, what about somebody who has limited knowledge of AI? So doesn't that, you know, make their chances of, you know, creating a successful company even slimmer?
Yes.
Because already, you know, companies, a lot of companies start don't ultimately succeed, right? So again, like I would say that, you know, if you have, so the reason why you would even from a non-technical background even think of starting a company in AI is because you have some kind of foundation, right? You have some skill set, either a business skill set or some kind of skill set that you think that now you can go learn something about AI and then start a company, right? So you would have some skill set right there. And you know that even if I don't start this company, I can go easily get a job in some field, some career, you know that. So that can always be your backup. So my thing would be, you know, try it for 2 years, right? Give it your all, give it, you know, do it like your life depends on it for 2 years, right? Just tell yourself, I'm going to commit to it for 2 years. If this works, great, I will have a successful company. If it doesn't work, I can go get a job. So, you know, what do I have to lose? So I think don't see it as failure, see it as a learning experience. So I would say what stops a lot of people from actually starting a company is that before they even start, they think, what if I fail, right? So I think it's a question of addressing that failure mindset. You know, it's very important to think that, you know, like there is no way that I can fail because, you know, like I'm just going in here to learn. So if I'm just going in here to learn, like, you know, how can I fail? Because, you know, either I create a very successful company or I learn something. So
we have to optimize for actually learning rather than the end result,
absolutely.
right? Awesome.
Absolutely. I think that goes without saying, right? Even if you have created a very successful company, right? Like you still have to constantly learn because say, you know, you have created a successful company, you are at a certain position, you know, you can easily be disrupted. But the next startup, you know, which is working off a garage and like building the next new thing, right? They can easily disrupt you. You won't be relevant anymore if you are not looking out for that, which is reason why, like I said, you know, growth mindset, you have to constantly keep learning. You have to constantly keep you know, basically have to be a lifelong learner. So yeah, I mean, so I think from the time you're starting a company, you just think that, okay, I'm getting into this to learn because in any case, I'm going to have to learn, you know, throughout my life. Because even if I have become very successful with this company, you know, I have to then build the next best thing because I have to constantly keep the company relevant. So yeah.
Awesome. Exactly. So for those of us that are not really entrepreneurs, we actually would like to look for a company to work for. What do AI companies such as yours look for when hiring talent?
Right. So I would say that, you know, I'm not talking about the basic skills. Of course, if we're hiring for data scientists or ML engineers, the first thing would be like, do they have the required skills, right? So not talking about those, but I'm talking about like some of the other, you know, qualities that we look for. So I would say the number one thing would be like, are you driven, right? Because one thing that I have personally seen is that the people who are very energetic and driven, they are able to like put on multiple hats, right? Which is extremely important when it comes to like a startup, because when you're hiring a data scientist or let's say a CTO, you very soon you'll see, they're not only focusing on the technical side, they're actually like helping you with, some of the other things. And let's say, they're kind of taking care of, soon, if you're hiring a CTO anyway, they'll have to like take care of a team, they'll have to manage a team. So they also need to have like the managerial skills, right? But even then, in a startup, when you're looking at, let's say 5 members or 6 members in a team, like everybody is wearing multiple hats. The CTO is also, talking to, let's say the CEO about, some of the, investing decisions, some of the strategic decisions, about hiring decisions. So, so that person needs to have, I would say, a very, needs to be very driven, needs to be intellectually curious, because if the person is not intellectually curious, they will not want to, know more about, let's say, some of the other fields, because they would just want to stick to like, what they've been hired for. So I would say intellectual curiosity, drive, learning animal is a big thing, right? So are you constantly like trying to update the knowledge that you have, right? Because even if you are just going to stick to, let's say, the technical side, just going to stick to like being a data scientist or an ML engineer and not going to bother yourself with the business side, even then, even with, your field, you still need to constantly keep updating your knowledge, right? So I think being a learning animal is super important as well. I would say these 3 are the main things that we look for personally at our company. Anytime we try to hire, that is that person dynamic? Is this person, energetic? Does this person display intellectual curiosity? Are they constantly trying to learn? Are they open to like learning new things and, going out of their comfort zone? I think these things are super important.
So having the mindset of a lifelong learner is really
Absolutely.
important.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
And that's a nice segue into lifelong learning. Yeah, the world we live in now, if you're not a lifelong learner, I think the world will leave you behind. So, but then the issue with that is, the universities and colleges do you think that universities and colleges are actually, meeting the needs of the lifelong learning generation?
I'm sorry, I couldn't follow that.
Okay, I said, do you think that the universities and colleges are meeting our needs of needing to keep up to date, of having to have this lifelong learning growth mindset, right?
So if I've got you correctly, you're saying that, do universities facilitate lifelong learning?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I would say that they do not, right? I really don't think that they do, because I think that essentially what you do at a university, and Adivya and I, we've spoken about this, I know he agrees, which is that essentially in a university, when you go, you have to, it's very exam based, right? So like if you have 3 or 4 semesters, like after like let's say 3 weeks, or after let's say like 1.5 months, that you're going to have your midterms. After that, you're going to have your final exams, right? I'm sure it may be structured the same way in Nigeria, that's how it is out here. So essentially what you do is that like you have some study material that you then have to learn, and then that you want to do well in the exam, so you have to basically go and like kind of like throw that in your exam paper without really even understanding much, right? So it's kind of like, if I may use a term, vomiting on the paper, right? Like you learn all those things, you cram your mind with that, and then you kind of go and write an exam. So essentially what it is that it's a test of your memory, not really a test of your intelligence, right? Because to be very honest, like I have personally seen like a lot of people who scored really well in their exams, not really do that, well, a lot of things. And maybe they're great in their field, but then, they stay stuck somewhere, because like I said, in order to really create a lot of impact, in order to really even create a company, you need to kind of be dynamic in that way, in the sense that you need to be interested about like a number of things. So, which is the reason why, I think that our education institutions back here, and I'm sure, it's the same back there, it's very memory based, like it's a test of your memory, not really, a test of your intelligence. So I would say that they do not instill a learning attitude in you. That I would say is a very personal thing. Like I know Adibaya, for example, like he constantly, read up books, even as a child, and that is something that he has always tried to do, which is that he's always tried to like gain more knowledge and learn. So, and, even when I talk to him right now, it's super evident that, that's the foundation that he's built for himself. So I would say that is a very individual thing, right? So, but then it would be a good thing if educational institutions actually instill that, And I think they can do that, right? And I think there are a lot of educational institutions in the US who actually they do this, which is that they don't have a lot of focus on, let's say, the sciences, or let's say, for you to have a very particular major, maybe even in the undergrads, for that matter of fact, you don't need to have a solid major till maybe your junior year in college, right? They have like the undergrads for 4 years, right? So as a freshman, as a sophomore, you can take up any kind of course that you want. You only finalize your major in a junior year, right? So I think when you have a structure like that, that kind of inculcates your intellectual curiosity and builds that learning attitude in you a lot more, than versus like what we have back here in India, which is that, from 11th standard itself, we have to choose our major, right? So if you've chosen the sciences, then in college you're going to take up some major, in the sciences itself, right? If you've chosen, like, let's say, business or commerce in your 11th or 12th standard, you're going to do something with business itself. So that, again, like from a very early age, you're kind of being like, taken in one direction, and your intellectual curiosity is nurtured. So if I have to talk, from my personal experience, one thing that I did to counter this was, I always made choices, like even when it came to like my 11th standard, I always made choices based on like, what have I not studied till now, right? So like till the 10th standard, everything that we had, like all the subjects that we have were fixed, right? But when it came to the 11th standard, I chose a subject that I had never studied before, like for example psychology, for example like English literature, but in a very critical way, in the sense that like the English literature that we'd studied before was like pretty much just reading a novel or reading a poetry and then that's it. But so I'm cutting it short because that's kind of digressing, but that is what I would say, that that is the one way in which you can counter that.
Touched on a lot of wonderful points. There's so many things I could say to that. Unfortunately, we have a ton of questions in the chat, so I think people really want to ask you questions. So I'll just ask you two more questions and we can wrap up. So I'll just summarize the last question into one. Can you tell us the thing that you're most proud of? It could be anything. And then in hindsight, would you do all this all over again?
Sure. So when you talk about like one thing that I'm most proud of, this answer could actually maybe surprise you, and it has really nothing to do with the, AI or even expand AI. So I think the one thing that I'm most proud of, but it definitely has to do with entrepreneurship, which is the reason why I want to bring it up out here, which is that, like the spiritual growth that I have seen in the last, I would say 1.5 years. The reason why I say that is because what I have seen personally is that being an entrepreneur takes a lot from you emotionally, right? So as you can probably tell, so when you have that kind of mental balance, mental clarity to kind of deal with those situations, that is extremely helpful. So because I would not be where I am today if had it not been for the spiritual growth that I've seen. And what I mean by spiritual growth is essentially like a state of internal calm which is always there inside, right? I think that this is something that needs to be built, because no matter what situation you're dealing with as an entrepreneur, you always have to be calm. You always have to remain calm, because only then can you take the right decisions. And even when you decide which idea do I want to go for, or what venture do I want to go for, what is the next decision that I'm going to take, which is really going to like take me to the next level, you need a high level of perception, right? And this is all built if you have a very calm internal condition. So I would say that investing in that was super important for me. I meditate like twice a day. So without that, I don't think I would have expanded, would have been as successful as it is, because like a high level of perception, and also being able to be calm even when something sudden comes up. As you can imagine, running a venture, sudden things happen, you then have to take care of that. So I would, my suggestion and my advice would be that, like also while you are also thinking about like, starting your career, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's, working at a company in the AI field, do invest in like, taking care of yourself, taking care of your internal condition, because that is really going to pay off with anything that you.
Love that answer. Like it's a unique answer. I don't think I was expecting that. Right. So yeah, $2 there. It's an awesome answer. This has been a brilliant conversation. I really enjoyed it. So I think right now we'll just open up for audience questions. So who's going to hand over to Victor? Victor. Yeah, don't take it.
All right, thank you very much, Amrita. That was really enlightening, and we learned a lot. Okay, So some of our audience, they're asking some questions which are very, very interesting here. Okay, and I'll just pick some and then I'll ask. We have the most recent question, which is asked this. Is it possible to teach machine that's ethics, empathy, and work compassion? That is it possible to make machines feel?
I would say no. I don't think that it is possible to, teach machines to be ethical, or be compassionate. The reason being that, machines essentially are built on, they're basically, coded, right? And they're built on data. So unless you can somehow, create a data set where you can infuse it with somehow being able to teach the machine to be empathetic or to be compassionate, I don't see that as being possible. Like, for example, I'll give you an example, right? So let's say, you told the AI machine that you have built, and that I want to solve the problem of climate change, please do that for me. And, the answer that they came up with is that, okay, humans are the biggest problem. And so okay, do something about humans, right? And so what if the machine comes up with the solution that, okay, like, let's kind of kill off all the humans, taking an extreme example out here, but but so true that, so I don't think that you can infuse it with ethics, which is the reason why I think explainability is very important, because the moment you can explain how the machine is coming to an answer, then that, okay, the command that I'm going to give it, what kind of an answer is it going to kind of come up with, so you can understand what the outcome is going to be.
Okay, very much. Thank you very much, Irene. That's great. And we have another one, which is, how do we filter what is hype or not in the AI space? Did you get that?
Can you repeat that?
All right. So how do we filter what is hype or not in the AI space? That's what is real in the AI space. What should be expected?
Okay, so how do you differentiate between what is hype and what is real, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. So I would say that, the way in which you could differentiate that is, breaking it down to basically first principles, right? So you can like imagine a lot of things, but I think I think you have to constantly ask yourselves, okay, like, does the basic rules of physics, does it support this, right? If it does, you can go build it. Maybe if you're thinking of something really audacious out here, it could take a long time. So in which case you also have to think realistically, will I get that kind of funding? Am I invested, for the long run in this? But other than that, if you're just talking about like just building the product, for example, I think that's possible. If I may take the example of, let's say, although this is, not really related to AI, but I'll still take this example. Let's say, for example, Elon Musk, right, building a reusable rocket, right? Like when he first thought of that, a lot of people would have maybe imagined that that is not possible. But then the reason why, he is able to do that is because the basic laws of physics supports that, right? Which is the reason why you have reusable rockets today. So if the basic laws of physics support it, then you can go ahead and build it, and then it wouldn't be hype, it would be pretty real.
Oh, that's really enlightening. Thank you. We have another one here. How can AI NLP be inculcated into STEM curriculum? Yes. How can artificial intelligence, natural language processing be inculcated in STEM curriculum? That STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Okay. Like how can it be included in STEM curriculum, right?
Yes, yes.
So I would say that, okay, let me ask you this. You don't have that in your engineering curriculum yet, AI?
No, we do. We are running AI for kids.
Right. So I would say the way in which you would kind of include that in your STEM curriculum is, it would be a part of some engineering course, right? So if somebody is taking up an engineering major in college, then one of the courses could be, an artificial intelligence, and that's how it could be included into the curriculum. Because essentially, like, AI has more to do with STEM, right? Rather than, commerce, business, or even humanities. So it's just a question of, the universities taking a decision to kind of go into AI. So I would say that the main kind of bottleneck out there would be building a research facility, right? So I think that once universities, kind of have decided to go for AI and decided to invest in AI, and they have like built a research facility for more AI research, easily you will see AI being included into like the STEM curriculum at the university. So it's just a question of, because you can't just have, simple courses, you also need to have a research facility where, students can go and do some research, write papers, come up with something new, because then only will there be innovation in the field. So I would say, once universities have created the research facility, easily you will have AI, be included into the curriculum.
Okay, that's great. We have another one here. What kind of task will AI handle for recruiters? What kind of task can AI handle for recruiters?
Recruiters?
Yes, please.
Okay. What kind of task can AI do for recruiters, right?
Yes.
So I would say, one of the big tasks that AI can do for recruiters is that when you hire somebody, right, there are many things that you're kind of looking for. One basic thing is that you're looking for skills, right? Does this person have the skills that I'm looking for? I'll give you an example. For example, when you're hiring a machine learning engineer, okay, you want to know, okay, does this person know the kind of coding languages that, he or she needs to know for him or her to be able to build the product that I want to build, right? Those are skills, right? So AI can easily look out for those skills that, okay, if this new hire that I'm hiring, do they have the skills that I need? After that, when you would actually need a human to step into the interview process is when you're trying to kind of look at some of the other qualities that I spoke about. Like, is this person a learning animal? Is this person a lifelong learner? Does this person have intellectual curiosity? Are they interested in other things? Do they have a lot of drive and energy? For those things like that, you would need a human to step into the interview process. But I would say, when you're just looking at the skills, the basic skills that's required for the job, AI can easily take care of that.
That's great. So AI will actually come in at a time, okay, and then humans will take over. That's wonderful. Thank you very much. We have another one here. So do you think AI will eventually be smarter than humans? Like we see in the movies?
I would say it is a possibility. It is definitely a possibility that AGI can be smarter than humans. But then again, I would say that even when it comes to human intelligence, there is a lot of difference, right? So, but then going back to what I had said before, right? Like with the growth mindset and the fixed mindset, the very idea of a growth mindset, which has been scientifically proven that no human being is even born with a fixed, amount of intelligence. The more they learn, the more intelligent they become. So same with AI, right? Like the more it learns, the more intelligent it can become. So if an AI is learning at a faster rate than, let's say, the most intelligent human out there, who is, let's say, let's take this comparison to make it simple. There's a human being out there who, is the fastest learner in the world. And there is an AI out there who kind of learns at a faster rate than that human being. So then what you will have is, an AI that's, more intelligent than even, let's say, the most intelligent human being on the planet. So then, yeah, for sure, that's possible. It all comes down to the rate of learning.
All right. This will lead me to the next question, which is very much related to this. So what kind of unexpected failures might occur in a world built upon AI? So how might a malfunction hack? How might a malfunction or hack Amos?
How are you to hack or malfunction with ML?
In AI machines or systems, how can it harm the humans if there is a hack in it?
How much time will you take to hack it?
No, how can it harm us, harm the humans?
Oh,
Okay.
how can it harm the humans?
Yes.
I'm really sorry. There's some technical problem from my end, which is the reason why I'm not being able to hear. So I'm really sorry that you're having to repeat.
There's no problem. No problem.
Yeah. So I would say that one of the main things that you can do in order to kind of ensure that AI. So let me first answer the first part of the question, which is that can it harm humans? Yes, it can. If you kind of go to AGI before solving the explainability problem, it can for sure, be harmful for humans. What do I mean by explainability problems? So right now, the state of AI, basically, deep learning is a black box, right? So you don't know how the deep learning model is actually reaching the answers that it's reaching, right? Like I'll give you the example of AlphaGo, something that I mentioned a few minutes back, which is that when DeepMind built the AlphaGo software, they have no idea how it eventually beat the best Go player in the world. They don't know how it did it. It did it great, but they don't know how. So that is what I mean by black box, right? When you don't know how what you have built is actually doing what you have created it to, right? You essentially don't have any control over it. So that is where you have to solve the explainability problem, in the sense that you have to understand, okay, like the AI model that I've built, how is it doing what, I have built it to do? If you don't know how it's doing that, then essentially you have, built a black box, because you can't explain how it's doing that. So if that explainability problem is not solved, then, and then if we reach AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, and intelligence that is more, intelligent than human beings, it will definitely be harmful for us.
All right, thank you very much. That was really enlightening. So is there a body that is accountable for AI system if it fails?
Unfortunately, there isn't a body yet. There isn't a body that can actually, be responsible, is actually responsible to ensure that AI is beneficial for humans. Because what you essentially are seeing are, these big companies in isolation, building their own, AI models, right? So there is a company called OpenAI that's working on AGI and doing AGI research. Although they are actually, doing a very good job at it, and they're being extremely responsible in the sense that they are making their research papers open source, and they're doing everything they can to ensure that AGI is safe for us. But at the same time, there is no collective body, that's there in place yet, which can ensure that that our progress towards AGI is safe. That is still lacking, but yeah, I think that soon we will be seeing that, either that, or I would say that my hope would be that we are able to solve the explainability problem before that.
Thank you very much for that. We have another one here. Are there any barriers to entry for girls in AI? That's for the female gender. Are there barriers holding them back from entering AI? And what are they?
Right. I would say that not really. Personally, I don't think that, because you're a woman, like you can't, be in AI. I think that you absolutely can, right? It's a question of like, learning everything that you need to learn about AI in order to be able to venture into the field. If you think that, there is any kind of barrier, I would say that exists in your mind, even if there are social situations that can, maybe make you feel that, okay, as a woman, I can't, really be in tech or, be in the AI field. I would say that, at the end of the day, it all comes down to your mindset, right? Because you can still overcome those social situations and still, be a very successful woman in tech. So, just don't think that, okay, like, am I a woman or a man? Just if you are driven, just learn, just take up courses and forget about everything else, and just kind of learn about AI and become the best AI professional there is. And once you have achieved that, nobody's going to care whether you're a woman or a man. There's all they're going to see is that you are extremely knowledgeable about AI, and every company is then going to want to hire you. So that's all that it matters.
That's really encouraging for ladies. We have another one here. Okay, what particular fields in AI have the greatest prospects for newbies? For people wanting to learn AI or wanting to go into AI, so what particular fields in AI is best for them?
Right. So I think that comes down to a very personal choice. So I would say that if you are still not decided on exactly, what AI field you want to specialize in, like whether, you want to do something with computer vision or whether you want to do something with NLP, if you still haven't kind of, decided on this, I would say that the best thing that you can do is kind of take up general AI courses, start with the very general AI courses. And, the more you learn about AI, the more you're going to see, okay, do I want to build something for computer vision? Like, for example, do I want to do something with self-driving cars or drones or, robotic arms, or, go in that direction? And do I want to do something with natural language processing? Like, for example, chatbots, like, do I want to build like an analytics tool for a company? Do I want to do some of these other things that exist with that you can do with NLP? So I would say that that again comes down to a very personal choice. My answer to you would be that start with a general course on AI, and then take it and try to specialize it from there.
All right, thank you very much. That's guiding. We have another one. What programming language is best used to write AI? What do you think is the best programming language?
Okay, so what programming language is best for to build an AI product? Again, it would depend on the product, right? So, for example, like I'll tell you what I have seen in the industry is that PyTorch is what is most commonly used, right? And then again, like if you have learned Python would be the programming language that you would need to learn in order to even be able to like understand the PyTorch library. So, and also Python is a very dynamic programming language to learn. So if you don't know Python yet, I would say to start with Python, because once you have learned Python, like some of the other languages actually becomes very easy to grasp. And once you know Python, you know, like you would also be able to easily learn PyTorch, and PyTorch is the most commonly used language for machine learning, is what my experience is.
So you're recommending Python for us
PyTorch,
being able to.
yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have another one. How can AI impact application development?
How again?
How can artificial intelligence impact application development?
I can't get the last word.
Application development. How can AI impact
Okay,
it?
how can AI impact
Yes.
application development,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So I think what you mean by that question is that what kind of application are you talking about? Like a general application?
Yeah, yeah. Basically, maybe
So
mobile apps.
probably coming from a software engineer, how
Yes.
can AI impact the fact that we need to build applications, which is like backend
Right.
application or
Right.
websites and stuff?
Right. So I would say that, you know, AI can be used to kind of automate some of the, you know, monotonous processes, or to make the product that you've built a lot easier to navigate, right? Like, for example, the one thing that you very commonly see in a lot of websites is that, you know, you have a chatbot there to kind of like interact with, you know, the person who's visiting the website, right? So if this is, you know, a company that's trying to sell something to, you know, a user, you have a chatbot there to basically, you know, be able to interact with the user to ensure that, you know, they don't just visit the website and then just, you know, kind of close it after a minute or two. But there's an interaction there that you have with the chatbot, and the chatbot is able to answer some of your questions. What you see is that, you know, you're able to basically land them as a user, right? Instead of just a potential user, or just like, you know, somebody who just visited your website and then, you know, kind of went off it and did not really become a user. So I would say AI, that was just one example. So I would say in these ways, you can use AI to make the process a lot easier, and to be able to kind of achieve the goal that you are looking for a lot easier.
Thank you. I have one more here. Now, AI is based on learning, on data, okay? So what if there is a situation where the biased data is fed into the AI machine? So how can we combat this so that unbiased data will not be used to train the machines, the models?
Mhm. So you're saying, how can you combat like a situation where you have a biased data? Right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I would say if you have figured out that you have a biased data, 50% of your job is done there, right? Because I think a lot of companies, when they build a training data set and there's a bias there, they've trained their model, the model is not performing well. The first thing that they need to do is figure out what the problem is. And I think when you have figured out, okay, the problem is that there is bias in my data, 50% of your job is done. After that, what you need to do is you need to figure out, okay, what is the bias out here, right? So I'll give you an example of, you know, facial recognition system, right? So what you see with a lot of these devices, especially like, you know, with a lot of smartphones that you have today, right? You know, they can easily, like, you basically like they scan your face and then, you know, the smartphone is unlocked, right? So that's facial recognition, you know. So when you have, let's say, you know, a company is building a facial recognition system in the US, right? And the training data set basically has images of, let's say, men and women, you know, who are, you know, who are American men and women, right? So when you take that same facial recognition system to, let's say, China, right? It won't perform well, because, you know, there's bias in the data, because, you know, it does not include, let's say, images of, you know, men and women from all ethnicities, right? So just an example of, you know, data that contains bias. I would say that once you figure out this bias, you know, you have to basically then counter that bias by making the data set more diverse. That would again depend on the application. I give you an example of facial recognition, but depending on what application it is, you would have to make the data more diverse.
All right, thank you very much, Amrita. You've really done a lot of good job here, enlightening us more on AI. Okay, and this will be all for now. We will take any more questions again. We really want to appreciate you. All right, so to our audience, before we go, please, we have a survey immediately after this program, so you can just fill in the survey. It will pop up in your browser where you can fill it in. So I'm just going to display the results of our poll. Okay, so we can actually just see how we feel, for us to actually fill the poll. So I believe it's being shared currently on our screen. Okay, so we urge you to always join us in our next series where we'll talk more on other enlightening facts and topics in tech. All right, so please don't forget to fill in the survey after we're done with this. All right, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Adebayo. Thank you, Amrita, for honoring the invitation to be here with us to enlighten us.
Thank you
more.
so
We
much.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Amrita. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for taking your time to do this.
Thank
If
you.
you're ever in the area, just let us know.
Thank you. Thank you for sure. Thanks. Bye.
All right, everybody. Have a great day. Please fill in your surveys. Thank you very much, everybody.